it's okay not to know
Mm,
everything about your business, especially around the financials, because it is a complex world. It's a complex language that's been designed to exclude people who didn't go to school specifically for it.
yep.
And so it's totally normal to not know, feel shame around it, feel like you should know. And what I would say is hopefully you can let that drop and go ask questions and find the help that you need and not feel like you're drowning in
Yeah.
the black hole of your financials.
Welcome to the Work Less, Play More podcast for busy entrepreneurs who are ready to ditch the hustle, stop burning out on busy work, and get back to having a life. My name is Lindsay Johnson, aka The Radical Connector, and I've spent the last 10 years teaching first-time entrepreneurs how to get customers and make money. Listen in as I chat with other hustle-recovering business owners as we share our top tips for, you guessed it, working less and playing more. Let's do this.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Work Less, Play More podcast. Today, we are diving into an uncomfortable topic, and that is money, specifically your business financials. And stay with me. I promise it's not going to be boring. We're not going to make you do any accounting on today's podcast, but we are going to dive into some of the reasons that you might be struggling to feel comfortable or confident around your business finances, and remind you, hey, unless you are a trained bookkeeper or accountant, why would you know these things? And it's okay. Today, we are talking to Jacinthe Koddo, a Canadian-based financial coach, educator, and the founder and CEO of Koddo & Co. As a serial entrepreneur with 6 businesses started, 4 failures and 2 growing successes, Jacinthe has learned the ins and outs of business finance over the last decade. She is now on a mission to increase financial literacy in and sustainability of women-led businesses, which of course leads to a positive societal ripple effect in our communities and throughout the world. Jacinthe does this work through group programs, one-on-one financial coaching, and she even offers contract CFO services. Now, if any of that sounded a little bit confusing or you're not sure what I meant, guess what? We are going to dive into it in today's podcast. So get ready to get a little nerdy with me, and let's talk about your business financials and why it's perfectly normal and a-okay to not know what you're doing and how to ask for help. Ready, friends? Let's do this thing. Welcome to the Work Less, Play More podcast. I am super excited that you're here. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, happy to be here. Excited to chat.
Me too. Today's topic is so important, and I think people are going to love it, but probably also feel a little triggered because today we're talking about money.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, we're talking about your business money, your money mistakes, your fears around money, understanding your business finances, and how to empower yourself as a business owner to know your numbers and, I don't know, handle your money well. So tell everybody that's listening, first of all, your initial thoughts when it comes to money and entrepreneurship.
Well, from my own experience, I can tell you that it is majorly triggering.
Yeah.
It was for me in my early days of entrepreneurship, for sure. So I didn't come from going to accounting school and doing the things all right from the beginning. I was an entrepreneur, a creative entrepreneur. I went to school for interior design and learned project management and budgets that way. But I very quickly, when I first started my first business, dug myself into credit card debt,
Mm.
was incurring thousands of dollars of interest, couldn't pay my rent twice in the course of 6 months over my entrepreneurial journey in the early days, and had to call my mom to pay my rent the next day. And yeah, like it just was very overwhelming. And so I see that with the clients I work with and the people that I work with and the teaching that I do. And I can so relate to all the feelings that come from feeling like, oh, I should know. Because I felt that way too. I should know how to do this. I should know how to do bookkeeping when I've only been taught how to do it in an hour. I should know how to make sure that I have enough cash in the bank when I didn't have a lot of financial literacy personally, even growing up, right? So how, when it comes to business, which is even more complicated, was I supposed to know those things? So it's a common experience I see in early stage entrepreneurs, we call them, or solopreneurs who are starting out. And I can totally relate to that.
Well, and it's very similar in when I talk with folks from the marketing and sales perspective, right? There is this belief when we start a business that I don't know if it's a belief. I don't even think it's conscious, to tell you the truth, that we should know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't know everything, we're somehow a failure. And I
Yeah.
think that comes from the pioneering spirit of entrepreneurship and the like make-ish happen spirit of entrepreneurs. But yeah, like what you don't know, especially around finances, can really hurt you.
Yeah.
And let's talk about this concept of going into massive amounts of credit card debt story when you first started your business. I know that a lot of people do that. They spend on things they don't need to. They make I want to say unwise investments only because they don't have the wisdom yet. What do you think was behind you going into all that credit card debt?
It was honestly not having personal financial literacy in the first place, right? Like I only learned how to budget about 7 years ago personally. Was it seven or eight, when a friend introduced me to a personal budgeting app, and she became my budgeting buddy. Like we did it together because we were such close friends, and the taboo of talking about money wasn't there. Like we were both really practical people. I was coming off of working at my latest startup or whatever business idea I was, where I didn't really take the advice of all the business coaches out there of having a part-time job and a bridge job and something to pay the bills while I was fiddling around with this business idea. And so I had just gotten a new job, and she said, it's time for you to start personal budgeting, right? And luckily, this is one of my best friends. So, I listened to her. But that is really what started my own financial journey, was learning through this personal budgeting app, which luckily had some incredible free resources. And I had my friend to be my accountability buddy. So I think that because I was never really taught when I was a kid, money was tight when I was a kid, but I didn't really know that until I became an adult and was like, oh, that's why we went to every single shoe store in the mall and then came back to the first one to get the shoes that we had tried on first, because we needed to check the price on everything. So it happened with that. And then it also, in those early days of my entrepreneurship journey, like the business coaches that were out there, and maybe they're still out there and I'm just not following any of them, were like, if you build it, they will come, kind of thing, right?
Oh, yes.
Just take what you're passionate about and make it into your business. And so I just was like, great, it'll be fine, right? And just like swipe, oh, pay for this, pay for that. And on top of that, I didn't have a plan, right? Like I didn't have what I now call the financial roadmap. I didn't have this plan for what I was spending and what I should be investing in for my business that was going to return revenue back, money back in. So the marketing and sales efforts, because in early days of entrepreneurship, like those are the things we should be investing in, the thing that's going to bring us more money. And then we can spend money on everything else once, we get some stable income coming in. So yeah, I think that was kind of the the precursor to that. Plus, I was just young and naive. I didn't have any entrepreneurs around me growing up. My dad went out on his own. He's an electronic technician and fixes audio equipment. So he went on his own when I was in high school, but he was always the sole prop, and he never had to do any marketing because everybody in the city we grew up knew him. So I didn't have any of that kind of built-in mentorship that a lot of entrepreneurs that I've seen who are successful in the beginning do have entrepreneurial families or connections in the early days. So yeah, that's really, really what led me down that path.
Well, and you brought up so many really important parts, which I would love to hear your take on this, because the build it and they will come myth. I talk about this a lot because it is sold, it's packaged and sold to new, vulnerable entrepreneurs who don't know a darn thing. And it is really attractive to just think that you can just build something and it will sell. And of course, for those who don't know, Build It and They Will Come is the plot of a movie, a Kevin Costner movie, where he hears a voice to turn his cornfield into a ball diamond, and the ghost of his father comes back to play catch, and there's more going on in the movie, obviously, but listen, it is my dad's favorite movie. Great plot, great story for a movie, terrible business plan, not a business plan. There is no such thing as Build It and They Will Come, with the rare instances of cases like your dad, like where there is a high demand and you already have that word of mouth happening for you. Yes,
you've been in the industry for a long time, and then you go on your own and it's just like, okay, great, we're gonna follow him, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my dad has a friend that moved to the one of the small islands on Vancouver Island, and he does like boat repair. and he is constantly turning around business, and it takes him months to be able to get to everything. And again, he didn't have to do any marketing because it's what he's known for and it's in such high demand. But for the most part, most service-based entrepreneurs, that's not their reality, right? And so I think, yes, to your point, and I'm coming around to a question here, because this concept of build it and they will come, like you said, it leads entrepreneurs to quitting their job way too soon when they need to be putting their own personal finances into their business in the beginning until their business can pay for itself, right?
Yeah.
Or they're not, like I say, having that bridge job that carries them through and at least pays their rent, puts food on the table while their business is starting to thrive. And so if you could give a piece of solid advice that I really want listeners to hear right now, what would you say around things like bridge jobs, quitting your jobs, how to not hang your survival needs on a brand new business?
Well, I would say I didn't want to hear it when I was in my early stages,
Yes.
right? I didn't want to hear it. So I totally get it. We all just are like, we just want to be doing it now. We want our business to be growing fast. I still feel that way about my business. I want it to grow faster. I want it to grow faster. And, it's doing pretty well. But yeah, in those early days, it was just like, no, I just want to be doing it. Um, and I would say that there also in those early days was a lot of like shame, like,
Wait, let's dive
oh,
into that. Yeah, what's the shame?
it felt like my business was a failure if I still had to have a part-time job, even though it's like chicken and the egg, right?
Yep.
If someone sees me working at some coffee shop, or I worked at a brewery of a friend's, or I did cater serving, right? There was still this kind of, okay, well, I say that I'm out there marketing and doing sales for my business, but then what happens if people see me in this
Yep.
other part-time job, right? But looking back, it's like, ugh, it's one of the things that I'm just like, if I had only taken that advice, I would have saved myself so many thousands of dollars of interest
Yep.
on the debt that I paid. Or the other thing too is like, so there's having the job to pay the bills and working as quote unquote side hustle first
Mm-hmm.
in the in-between times. And it also depends on, like, for me, I was always, all the previous business ideas I had were somewhat innovative. So it wasn't just like, okay, this is a common thing people need. It's nothing new. You don't have to educate people about it first. So that was my first business idea. So I was like, I'm doing this dinner salon concept and it can be used as a facilitation method. But first I had to educate all
Yes.
these corporate leadership buyers what this was. And that just takes so long. I learned in my early days of entrepreneurship, this business program I was in at the time, the stat was like most entrepreneurs go out on their own around 40. And that tends to be from a career they have been doing. And they're like, I can do this on my own now.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm in that stage now with this type of business where it's like I built another business with co-founders, learned a ton. That's how I learned all this business financial literacy, right? Because I co-founded this management accounting company by happenstance with a bunch of CFOs, chief financial officers, CPAs, so certified accountants, certified professional accountants. And I learned from the inside by building this management accounting company how you're actually supposed to do your pricing, look at your margins, build a financial model, track these things so that you are building a profitable business with enough cash in the bank,
Yeah.
understand what you're investing in, like we were talking about earlier, spending wisely and not feeling stressed about the cash
Yes.
because you have this transparent picture, right?
Well, and that's to your point, right? There's I would have avoided going into all this debt and paying all this interest is one side of it, but also the stress. Like think about the stress you were living under. And it's really hard to be excited about and build a business when you're in that much stress. And especially because then you begin to see everyone you meet as like your dinner or your grocery bill or
Yeah,
your
the
rent
scarcity
payment.
mindset
Yeah.
comes up, right?
Exactly. And it's no longer about you serving people. It's about, I'm going to need this person because otherwise I'm not going to be able to pay my rent.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's not to say like, business debt can be an amazing tool to leverage.
Yeah.
So, and I'm talking about like low interest line of credit, that type
Yeah.
of stuff, right? But what happens in like with me, with my early entrepreneur, I didn't know those were options, right?
Yes.
I didn't know that that was a thing. And so I just went the easiest route, which was I got all these credit cards.
Oh,
Let's
That's the
Let's just do
worst
it.
kind of debt.
So anyway, back to the
But
bridge
also
job.
too, well, I was going to say, hang on, because the thing is,
Yeah.
and I want to acknowledge this for listeners that can relate to this, because there is this belief that because we have this build it and they will come mentality. And again, I've been doing this 20 years. And so I've seen consistently people have this time frame of 6 months in their heads. It's across the board, 6 months. I should be able to be like quitting my job within 6 months of
$100,000 in 6 months.
no problem. And like reality is that takes years to get to for most people. And because your first year, you're just fumbling, like you're just like throwing spaghetti against any wall and just trying to figure things out. It's a wonderfully exciting hot mess of a time as an entrepreneur. But because we have this mentality of 6 months, I'll be rolling in a 6-figure earner, we think it's safe to go into that kind of credit card debt. We think it's okay, and then before you know it, we are in some big trouble.
Exactly. Yep. So, and yeah, back to the bridge job. So like I said, I've worked at a friend's brewery. I have done cater serving. I've also done this too while I was working at startups, because I've worked in a handful of startups as an employee as well, not my own, but as somebody else's employee. And they are just a hot mess, right? Like in the beginning, our own or the people that we work with, everything is a mess. The systems are a mess. They don't have budgets in place. So I also want to acknowledge that's a totally normal place to be, for sure.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wish that I had had that kind of job to keep me sane, to just have some money, like when we look at, not called Maslow's hierarchy anymore. What is it called now? The
I
base
don't know.
needs.
I didn't know they did change the name. Okay, I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah. So the base need, right? Like any money coming in, regardless of where it's coming from, is gonna make us feel more secure.
Yeah.
And that will give more brain space and allow us to have more power in ourselves behind what we are actually building, right? So yeah, I would totally change that about what I did, but I've ended up here where I am now. So
you're everyone's cautionary tale.
Yeah.
When I decided to start my business, I actually became a nanny, and I totally fell into that. I had put an ad on Craigslist and I was like, hey, are you a busy family that needs help around the house? I'm starting a business. And so I've got like basically free time to come help you while I figure out my own stuff. I was very transparent in this ad, and apparently that's called a nanny. And so I had so many people writing me. I ended up working with a few different families. I did that part-time. I also did part-time ad sales for an online publication. And for me, it was very much about, this is just the job that's paying my bills and giving me money to invest in my business. And you're right that there is this, like, how can I say I'm this big serious business owner and then also I'm picking up the kids from school as a nanny, right? Or working in a brewery or a coffee shop. There can be that mentality. And especially when people start to have a bigger vision for themselves, right? And it seems like such small potatoes. There can be resentment. And really, truly, like, we do need to keep our egos out of it. We need to be like, and this is a question I'll often ask folks, like, where is your future? Where are you going towards? Then what you do to pay the bills, it's irrelevant. You're just paying the bills. Keep your eye on where you're going, but do not leave so soon that you don't have that money to live and to put into your business.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I find that, obviously now I have a ton of business financial literacy and personal financial literacy. I also, though, don't know everything. Like, both of those worlds are super vast. There's so much I don't know. But what it has allowed me to do, and this is, again, what I pass on to my clients, is like, it has empowered me, because before it was taboo. I felt taboo talking about money in general.
Yeah.
But the more, and this is so cliche, but like the more I learn about business financials, because that's what I work in, the more I recognize what I don't know. And then I feel more empowered to just be like, I don't know. I need to find out the answer. I need to talk to somebody about it, right? So it's like, the more I actually opened up and learned from my founders or my co-founders, and, just like said to all these accountants I was working with, like, what does that mean? Because I've never worked in the accounting world and I'm surrounded by all these CPAs, and they're like, oh, okay, right? Like they realize that they're speaking this language, and I'm just going like, okay, what does that mean? Explain it to me. So now I have no problem doing that.
Yes.
And, as I had more people around me, I felt comfortable, right? You have to feel it's just like anything, right? Anything you're worried about or feel shame around or anything like that. You have to pick the right people to talk to first. But the more that you talk to the right people, the more you're like, oh, this is totally normal.
Yeah.
And, like that's what I recognize, right? From my friend who also was a fellow solopreneur business owner. So she got me on the personal finance path.
Mhm.
And then we also were able to just like jam about business stuff and like, great, we both don't know this answer.
And it's okay. I'm like, my gosh, why do we put so much pressure on
Yeah.
ourselves to know everything? And
Yeah.
I remember like again, ideally, entrepreneurs, one of the first expenses that they're going to be investing in is either a bookkeeper, or if that's out of their budget, a consultation with a bookkeeper to at least help them get their bookkeeping practices set up, right? Investing in an accountant, at least for at the end of the year, to help you make sure you're doing everything correctly to set you up for the next year. That is an important expense that I do recommend. Like again, I'm all about how can you build a business leanly? Where can you really not have to worry about spending money? Having bookkeeping, having accounting support in whatever way that looks like is an absolute investment that people need to have. And then of course, the busier you get, the more complex your business model gets, you'll need more support, right? However, for the entrepreneurs who are 2, 3, 4 years in and have been totally winging it and their books are a hot mess, and someone asks them for the expense report and they break out in a cold sweat, I know that it is so freaking hard to again expose yourself and expose the hot mess that you are to someone to get for some help. What is your advice to the people who know they need help but literally are dying inside out of the shame of not keeping better?
Well, I would say, yes, I too have experienced that. And I've also seen it happen from the other side, right? Because I worked with all these
Yeah.
accountants and also work with entrepreneurs who have had relationships go super sour with previous bookkeepers and tax accountants. And
Wait. Can I ask, what makes a relationship go sour?
most of the time, in my experience, it's a lack of common language. It's a translation error, right? So the accountants and bookkeepers speak one language and the entrepreneur is like, what the heck does that mean? And then, like me in my early days,
Yeah.
are scared of asking questions or feeling stupid or silly
Yeah.
that they have to ask these questions. And then they just don't. And then they're like, oh, my bookkeeper is doing a terrible job or my accountant's awful. They never get back to me.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a totally common thing that happens all the time.
And I'm
So
totally going to
first,
interject one little quick thing
yeah,
into that. Okay, so to all my ADHD entrepreneurs, this is something like when I would meet with my accountant and we would go through my bookkeeping practices and things like that, the amount of times I would have to book another session to have her go through again, because I know she's been through it, but now I'm trying to do it and it's like nothing stuck, right? And that is really common for people who are neurodivergent. Like we do need to hear things over and over, and sometimes these concepts are not immediately grasped. And so just to your point to that, I would say to anyone again, holy crikey, life is too short to be afraid of feeling dumb. This is your business, okay? Let that go and ask until you understand it.
Yeah.
And also the onus is on the professional to speak to you in a layman's way that you can understand. So
Well, it doesn't always happen that way.
I know that,
Yeah.
but it's more just like, don't feel ashamed that your bookkeeper or accountant doesn't know how to communicate effectively with you. That's not a you problem, but just keep advocating for yourself in that relationship.
Totally. Yeah. And, it's like with any working relationship or any personal relationship, there has to be a fit. So,
Yes.
I always say get 2 to 3 recommendations from people, and it can be from your peers or groups that you're in or wherever, and interview these people. You don't have to go with the first person.
Yeah.
And especially for creative entrepreneurs, neurodiverse entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
women entrepreneurs, we tend to want to connect more or be educated. Whereas, people who have been entrepreneurs for a long time or are building their 8th business, they're just like, great, I know what the tax accountant does. Here's the year-end financial package. My bookkeeper, like they trust what those people are doing
Yeah.
because they've already had experience with it. But when we're in these early days and also feeling this kind of like shame or embarrassment around not knowing, a lot of the times we're like, but we want to know. So we want someone to educate us, whether it's the
Yes.
bookkeeper or the tax accountant, about what they're doing so we can understand what they're doing and
Yes.
have some trust in that. Because otherwise it's a black hole, right? Like the accounting and finance side of businesses for most people is a black hole. So I would say like ask for 2 or 3 recommendations from people you trust who like who they work with, interview those people, ask them about their approach, and be upfront. Like, I want to learn about what this is. I know that's maybe not exactly what you do, for example, but I would like some sort of education around this.
Yeah.
There's also many free resources out there. I've got some on my website. There's lots of women's groups and financial literacy raising type groups that will go through some basics like what is the profit and loss? What
Yeah.
is the balance sheet? These kind of like what are called standard accounting reports. So those are great things to look at. And then there's talking to people like me, right? So I am a business financial literacy coach. I also work as a contract CFO with service-based businesses. And what that means is I'm this glue from the financial side of things
Yeah.
and the translator and the coordinator between the bookkeeper, your tax accountant, telling you when it's like, oh, we should probably bring in an HR person, or we should talk to your lawyer about that, or we need to talk to the tax accountant about that. Because in bigger businesses, there's these roles of CFOs who oversee the entire financial
Yes.
operation of a business, and they're constantly doing these things.
Yeah.
And so with small businesses, that is a thing. And this is why I do what I do. There's a gap, right? Because people reach out to their bookkeeper and they're like, hey, can you help me understand like what's actually happening in my business? And for most bookkeepers, they are in the details. Like that is where they are incredibly good. And so they'll be like, well, here's your P&L, here's your balance sheet, here's what those mean. But like, how do you actually take those numbers and use them
Yeah.
to grow and scale your business and make forecasts and make plans and decide when to hire and those types of things? So that's not what a bookkeeper does
Yeah.
generally. If you do have one like that, they're a unicorn and it's great because it's really hard, right? To go from really detailed to really high picture in one kind of job.
Do you think most bookkeepers are trained in
No,
forecasting? Exactly. They're not trained in
no, it's a
forecasting.
different skill set. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a
Yeah.
different part of accounting. So I'll zoom out for a second too, because this comes to my point about a tax accountant. There's 4 major areas of accounting, and most people plus bookkeeping. So 4 areas of accounting plus bookkeeping. Most people are like, I have an accountant, and so they should be able to help me like figure out what's going on in my business. And then their accountant never responds to them, and they're like, oh, my accountant's terrible. But
Mm,
the tax accounting is one of 4 of the areas of accounting for your business. They're there for compliance with the government regulations. They're there to advise on your total holistic personal and business, tax picture and make decisions about your RSPs and TFSA room and all that kind of stuff. And that's just in a nutshell.
yeah.
There's so much they're in charge of, right? Then there's management accounting, and that's where I sit, and that's where your bookkeeper provides the data for all of these areas, right? Because if we don't have the data from your expenses and your invoices and all the stuff, we don't have numbers to work from. But management accounting is the area where we look at leveraging the numbers that are in your system to forecast forward, scale and grow the business, make clear buying decisions,
Yeah.
look at what we've been spending and what the return is, say for like sales spend or advertising spend, like paid ad spend, if you're doing any digital marketing ads, that type of thing. So we actually like look in the day to day, month to month, year to year, what is happening from our financial data that we can use to identify patterns, see what has worked, what hasn't, so that we can make better decisions for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's financial accounting, which is about financing the future. So that's generally for very large businesses, but with smaller businesses too, financing can include like, okay, well, do we need to go get a business loan? Do we need to go get a line of credit? Right? It's like, how do we actually make sure we have cash to fund the plans that management accounting has put together? And then the 4th one is audit accounting, which most small businesses generally won't ever touch except if they get, knock on wood, audited by the CRA. But there's also private audits, like if you're selling a company or you're getting an investor or a public company or a nonprofit or a charity, they have to go through these third-party audits.
Yeah.
So 4 very distinct areas, but like nobody tells us about this stuff.
Nope.
Right? I didn't know that. And now I'm like, this is part of what I educate. I'm like, so I work in management accounting, and that's where your tax accountant doesn't, and your bookkeeper is like the one giving all the data,
Yeah.
but they don't necessarily have the big picture for what to then do with it, right? So yeah, that's in a long-winded way.
I feel like that's probably going to hopefully blow some people's minds, and also hopefully make people realize that, yeah, if you're feeling frustrated with your bookkeeper or your accountant, you could be going to them for the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's so funny how much what you do and what I do parallels each other.
Yeah.
Because that's what I would say. Like, if someone comes to me and they're like, I think I should hire a marketing company, it'll be like, hold on, what kind of marketing are you needing, or what kind of support are you needing? Because it's usually not a marketing company, it's a social media manager, or it is a, you know what I mean? Like
SEO
SEO, exactly.
sales coaching, actually,
a
instead.
copywriter. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A sales funnel expert. And
Yeah.
so it's the same thing, but from the financial perspective, it is really important to understand, just at least, as I say, as you said, at a basic level, who does what their roles are, so you can be reaching out to the right person. And I especially love, I love the service you offer about that, the CFO services for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small businesses, because yeah, like it is an important role to have somebody who is understanding your finances, understanding where you want to go, helping you really grow and scale your business. And I love that people don't have to hire an in-house CFO person. Like, this is so that they can hire you part-time to just really help them grow. And I am excited for when entrepreneurs and solopreneurs get to that level of business where they get to hire that specific service from you, because it's good. It's like you're growing and you're scaling, and guess what? It's no longer all on you, solopreneur. You can bring someone in to help you financially just blow your business up. I would love to hear what you love about that kind of work with entrepreneurs at that level.
Yeah. So before that, I wanted to go back to,
Yes.
I think earlier you had the question of like, or maybe this is just how I heard it, was kind of what to expect at what level of entrepreneurship. Like, when should you get a bookkeeper? When should you get a tax accountant?
I didn't ask that, but that's a great question.
Okay.
No.
When should you start with someone like me? Well, yeah. So it kind of plays into this as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's levels, right? So when entrepreneurs are what is called early stage, right? Early revenue. Generally, this is, that year where it's like under $30,000, first 1 or 2 years. Then, it's kind of like, as long as you can pull a CSV file from your credit card, like, okay, number one, back up. Have a separate credit card and a separate bank account.
A thread of a sweater. Are you sure you want to pull?
I know.
Oh,
I'll do it in a nutshell. Ideally, have a separate bank account and credit card for business expenses and purchases. That makes things easy. When you're small business, don't really need to have bookkeeping done monthly, even quarterly. It's just at year end. So it's really easy to just like pull a CSV file from your bank account and credit card and get that organized. And that's what you give to your tax accountant at the end of the year. As things start going, like when you're getting to the 60K mark and above, it can be really beneficial to hire a bookkeeper quarterly-ish to just, get your books in order. You give them bank statements. And as long as you've been invoicing and, recording payments, that's pretty much all they need. And I'm, again, totally generalizing.
Yep.
And then as soon as we're kind of like 100K up, even 120, it makes sense to start getting books done once a month-ish. It can be very low cost, like $200 to $500, which 500 might seem a lot even at that stage. But that's when you can go even bi-monthly or quarterly still. Yeah. And so we're starting to build our team around the financials and just make sure that like when we come to year-end tax time, it's not just like, overwhelming procrastination, piles of receipts. Everything's digital these days. So as long as you keep your receipts, you can, grab your CSVs and that works fine.
Can I tell you a guilty little secret?
Yeah.
If I have an expense that's not a digital receipt, I don't write it off, because I don't know where the hell that receipt is. And even and I know all I have to do is take a picture and upload it to my accounting software. I don't. If it's like a $20, isn't that terrible? And that's, what this is. Okay. And I'm going to say again, this is the, what we call the ADHD tax, right? There are things financially that cost ADHDers more because we either don't have the mental capacity to do it, or we forget about it, we lose it. And that is a compromise I made with myself years ago, that if it's not a digital receipt, I'm not going to write it off because the mental burden is too much. And so, maybe I have a couple extra $100 a month that I could be writing off, or a year that I could be writing off, but that's that ADHD tax that I pay. Now, friends, I don't tell this to people, so welcome to the dirt under my business rug. But if it's not a digital receipt, but it's funny because when I was doing my taxes last year, I'm like, really, pretty much because of the pandemic, like literally everything is a digital receipt these days. Like it's there, it's right there. I don't have to go searching for it. And so anyways, I just wanted to share that for folks.
Yeah, the side note. Well, receipts are the worst. It's so hard. I can't wait until like open data comes and the banks are just like, they have the point of sale information right there.
It's
so
right there. Yeah.
It'll come one day. So yeah, no, it's, again, totally normal thing to have happen. Yeah, so then of course, everybody needs an accountant, a tax accountant on an annual basis to do their tax filing. The earlier, the better, in my opinion. Like it's worth it as a sole proprietor, and as soon, like when you're wondering if you should incorporate, that's a great time to talk to a tax accountant if you haven't already. And then someone like me, like I love having conversations anytime because I'm always happy to point people in the right direction and get them kind of on the right foot with the right people.
Yes.
But yeah, for my one-to-one service side, I usually start with service-based entrepreneurs, so comms and PR agencies, marketing people, interior designers, those types who are effectively building agencies. They might not call them that, firms, that type of thing, around the $200,000 annual revenue mark. Because that's when things start getting a little bit chaotic. Like they can be chaotic before, but it's like there's real chaos that's happening because there's like money coming and going out of the bank account. They don't actually know if they're making any money. They're wondering if they should start hiring employees because they're hiring a bunch of subcontractors. They're not sure how they should be paying themselves. They might not have incorporated yet, and they're going like they're filing their taxes, and their tax account's like, ooh, you're going to pay a lot of tax. So it's like it's a big crux point.
Yes. Can I just pause for a second? Because a lot of people might not know that. Like when you get to a certain revenue point in your business, you need to be incorporating. Otherwise, you are paying way too many taxes. You can be paying less taxes. And I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yeah, it's not so much revenue as what your profit is. So as a sole proprietor, any money you have left over, your net profit, after you take what you sell and how much you sell, and the expenses for write-off, what's left over is your net profit. And as a sole proprietor, that's all your income. That's what you've earned for the year in the eyes of the government. And so generally, and again, you should double check this with a tax accountant. I'm not a tax accountant, but generally it's around like a $60,000 net profit mark is when it starts to be more advantageous to be incorporated, because you'll get taxed at a lower rate on the corporate side, and you can pay yourself in a different way from your corporation. And so top line revenue, like gross revenue, what you actually invoice, is somewhere for most service providers between like 100 and 120 in revenue. But it can also depend if you have no expenses and you're making 60K. Right. It also depends too on where you want to take your business though. So if you're making 120K as your top line revenue, but your net profit's 30K, you don't necessarily need to incorporate unless you're actively wanting to grow your business, hire people, that type of thing. So it also depends on what your vision is and where you're taking your business, right? So,
and can I just say, I hope we haven't lost any of our listeners. I love this stuff. The numbers of it all is so exciting. And, I think that is something that I'm just going to totally generalize here, but I do think people want to know that. I do think entrepreneurs want to know what this all means, want to know how to understand this and really feel empowered to do that.
Totally.
And it's so exciting that somebody like you exists who can be like, yeah, I'll take you under my wing. You're going to learn all these things and what this means and how to think this way so that people can feel empowered over their business finances and make better decisions.
Back to one of your early points too, of like when you're looking for a bookkeeper, a tax accountant, or someone like me to work with, it's like what should you be looking for? And one thing I would say is like, if you feel like ish leaving whatever interview call, then that's not the right person, right? Because in my mind and the approach that I take and that, many of the tax accountants and bookkeepers I take is like, we're meeting you where you're at. Because we know,
Yep.
We know that this is the state of the world because there is not a lot of financial literacy out there for people in high school and university, unless you go to accounting school or do an MBA. But I've even talked to accountants and MBAs who are like, yeah, but I don't actually know how like the operations of of your financials and cash work, because they're in a different area of accounting, or they've done an MBA and they know like business structure at a high level, but not the day-to-day, like how the books are done and invoicing and, you know, payments. And there's all these technicalities, right, at every single level of your books, your tax accounting, your management accounting, right? So, but like, you shouldn't feel like ish talking to someone. You shouldn't be made to feel stupid. And so if that's the case, it's the wrong person.
Yeah, get out of there. Yeah, that's such great advice. And honestly, that's great advice for anybody,
Yeah,
whether it's
totally.
a doctor or a coach or a romantic partner, like anybody. If you feel terrible at the end of this interaction,
Yeah.
no. So tell us a little bit about the roadmap that you've created.
Well, I have a free resource called the Roadmap to a Stable Six-Figure Biz Guide that will, you know, help those entrepreneurs who feel like everything's a black hole start to get their bearings around all the different aspects of their financial roadmap and start feeling more confident in the conversations that they're having around the financials in their business. This is for entrepreneurs who feel like they have no clue what's going on with their financial side of their business. It feels like a big black hole. And they are struggling with, you know, can they hire someone? How should they be paying themselves? How much can they be paying themselves? Are they actually making any money? Can they invest in bringing on a marketing coach or getting a space outside of their home as their office, right? And what it allows them to do is see transparently into the financial picture of their business. So they understand at all times and are working towards at all times building a profitable business and a business that has enough cash, because just because you're profitable doesn't necessarily mean you have cash, and vice versa. Just because you have cash doesn't mean it's actually profitable.
Yeah.
So effectively, it's like the tool we use to make sure the business we are building, what's called the business model, actually works.
Yes.
Because as for-profit businesses, you know, at the bottom line, we need to be profitable.
Yeah.
But how we spend that money can vastly vary. And especially with, you know, businesses that are socially conscious, they want to be treating their people well, they want to pay themselves well, they want to give back to their communities. We can do so much knowing that we're building a profitable business and decide what we're going to do with that profit to give back.
I love it. Amazing. We're going to include all of Jacinthe's contact information so you can connect with her there. And Jacinthe, I have one final question before we wrap up. At the end of every podcast, of course, this is called the Work Less, Play More podcast. I would love for you to fill in the blank. Work less, blank more.
Work less, have more freedom.
I love it. Freedom more. I was going to say,
I know, freedom more.
Spend more smartly.
Yeah. No, all of this is about creating freedom, you know?
It really is. And again, empowering yourself to understand your business finances, how to spend and invest wisely, you know, how to use the knowledge of your business finances to grow and grow on a solid foundation. That's huge. That's huge. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Yeah, no problem.
Before we go, do you have any last imparting wisdom you want to share with our listeners?
I would say it's okay not to know everything about your business, especially around the financials, because it is a complex world. It's a complex language that's been designed to exclude people who didn't go to school specifically for it.
Yep.
And so it's totally normal to not know, feel shame around it, feel like you should know. And what I would say is hopefully you can let that drop and go ask questions and find the help that you need and not feel like you're drowning in the black hole of your financials.
I love that. Oh, that made my heart feel so relieved. Wonderful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It has been a blast. And friends, remember to go and look at the show notes and check out Jacinthe and get her roadmap and connect with her if you need a little support, because she will whip you into shape in a loving and kind way. Thank you so much, Jacinthe.
Thanks for having me.
Friends, thank you so much for listening in. You'll find all the links to all the resources we discussed over on theradicalconnector.com/podcast. Entrepreneurship is a tool for creating the life of of your wildest dreams. But it will also eat up all of your time, money, and energy if you let it. If you're a service-based entrepreneur and you're ready to work less and play more, get on my email list or contact me directly, and let's talk about how we can get your business working for you so you can build the life of your wildest dreams and get out there and change the world. Happy connecting. Bye for now.